Hello, everyone. Today is January 19th. I'm here with Michael Carroll. How are you doing, Michael? Crap, he just broke out. All right, he's back in. All right, you're back in.
Okay. I'm doing well though. How are you?
I'm doing good. That was pretty funny.
Yeah, what a way to start.
Yeah,
What
what go?
do you know what number this is?
This is 140. This has got to be 140, something along those lines.
And that's is what, like number 6 for me? Or 7?
So for
5?
you, 7. I think it's 7.
Wow.
Yeah,
Awesome.
seventh episode. I know one. I don't know if we've talked about this before. I haven't. Oh no, Michael just left again.
Oh. I don't know what's going on, dude.
I don't know either, but at least you're coming back quickly. Um, that podcaster I used to talk about, Russ Roberts of Econ Talk. He has one guest on about 36, 37 times as of last year.
How many
So
episodes?
probably 700 to 800 episodes at that point.
That's cool.
Yeah. I mean, he kept that up since 2006.
Wow. It's impressive.
It is.
That's like it's a dedicating I mean, props to you, man, for like continuing to keep going, because I know it's not easy to like keep going time after time, and like there's nobody pushing you to do this other than yourself, so it's like it's a cool thing to keep doing, so props to you for that.
Thank you. It's much easier than it was, say, a year ago, or I'm sorry, 4 years ago. Now I can, have certain tools and processes in place. And it's like, it's not necessarily like riding a bike, but it's much, much, it kind of is in a sense. Like there's for certain things that you give a lot of respect to, and like audio. I mean, I used to be more nonchalant about using my USB based microphone. No, and I forget what type of audio standard it is, but it's like I used to work in a theater at UC San Diego, and they used like audio cables. So I think it's XLR. It's like instead of because USB, it's like a different type. So that's one thing, but
Okay.
yes.
So that's why you have the one with the cord, or are you talking about the microphone?
This
Which
microphone, yeah.
microphone? Got it. And
It's
that's the audio jack going to your computer.
It actually uses a type of mixer, because also to do USB with two people in the same room is like impossible. I don't know if it's actually impossible, but I had a very difficult time doing it. And so using XLR with an audio jack that you can get, I use the one Zoom that I got off of Amazon, and then you have XLR microphones going in. I think most people do use XLR. I'm just not sure how their whole process is. But
Yeah.
that's the number one thing, is to have really great audio. And now everyone is consuming podcast by video, most people in the form of clips. So like even for this, I would do like we can download the live stream instead of being a podcast. And even Gary Vee, he spoke about this once. It's like you do the live stream, it's a live stream, you record it, you turn it into a podcast, and then you also create clips of that podcast so that you have like a stream of things. And even like, did you see I posted this week several times. I might post again on what I had Bob Keene, a research ecologist, on a few years ago.
Okay.
And he specializes in wildfires. I mean, it's biofuels and various biofuels, and he spoke about how different fuels create different fires and the modeling in that. And so I was able to speak about, or I was able to share those clips again this week. And
That's
Gary
cool.
V, yeah, it is cool because Gary V shares stuff from like 2008 or 2006 all the time. Like he's read,
Just because it's old content doesn't mean it's not usable, right?
yes,
Yeah, that makes sense. And especially if it's relevant, like the fire stuff, right?
exactly.
Yeah,
People do this for Joe Rogan automatically because he's so, famous, and he talks about so much stuff. But like even Joe, he spoke about wildfires and how everything's going to burn. I don't know if you saw those clips of Joe Rogan speaking, and people were reposting them uh like right as the fires were burning. So like people do this of Joe Rogan automatically, but for me to have like the actual interview, there's easy way to put out content.
yeah, that's cool. Yeah, it's you're consuming these other people who are very good with content, and you're just like trying to replicate some of the things that they're doing. And do you feel like it's helped, like get you more of what you're after, or is it more of just like practice, or like what's the end game? Is there an end game, or is it more of just like just a post?
It was to post. I think there was always an end game, and it's just to continue to have a voice and
Yeah,
continue to put this out because it's very powerful. And I think, it's difficult to comprehend when it's like, we were speaking about this earlier, how millennials are in that generation where, social media and technology, I think particularly social media, wasn't there
yeah,
for a decent amount of our youth. And then, the generations above us, it wasn't there at all until they were much older. And so social media is, you know, for millennials and Gen Z and Gen Alpha. And I think, I'm not sure which one, I don't know where Gen Alpha and Gen Beta starts, but I think Gen Beta just began. Like Gen Alpha is like 0 through 15,
uh,
and Gen
so
Z, what go?
so Gen Z is obviously like my sister's generation. Gen
Yes.
Beta is between my sisters and 15, and then Gen Alpha is
No, that's Gen Z
Gen.
between 30 and 15.
Got it.
And then 15 to 0 is Gen Alpha. And then Gen Beta is like being born and will be born. I think this is getting a little too, personally, like, I'm like, I'm not sure. It's interesting about the generation thing, but
Yeah.
that's supposedly what just happened.
So Milo's Gen Alpha.
Yeah, I think he's the last of Gen Alpha.
Interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. Well, that's cool. Yeah, I don't know. Do you think because we grew up with technology, but we also grew up with like a part of our lives in the very maybe 10, 15 years where there wasn't a ton of technology, or like maybe it was just like the earlier phase of technology. Do you feel like there's a benefit to either one, or like do you feel like it's nice to like have that first part of your life not be consumed with just technology like we had, as opposed to like what Gen Z grew up with, which is just technology everywhere? Like, do you feel like there's a benefit either way?
I I mean, it seems I listened to Jonathan Haidt. Do you know Jonathan Haidt?
Yeah,
He's very strongly opinionated that um, the iPhone and social media has been very harmful. He says particularly to young women. Um,
yeah,
but even then, you go to someone like Scott Galloway, and he talks about the he talks about he talks about young men and the problems they're facing. So I'm not sure if it seems like it's not the best implementation, and a lot of things in, you know, this country, like in a capitalistic society, you kind of just let them roll, and then once it becomes an issue, then we kind of put back laws. I'm thinking particularly of like wildlife, hunting and selling of wildlife game, like that was completely legal, and then it's not because it's really devastating, and then you have like other things. So I'm not sure. This seems really devastating, and we might. It could be. What do you think? You have your recent father. It's going to be very influential in your son's life.
I don't know. It's hard to like wrap my head around it. I don't really know. It's hard to see. It's hard to tell. I feel like there's some benefits to it for sure. Like Lexi and I talk about this all the time with like cell phones. Like we were like, okay, we always see these kids who are like 7, 8. They have cell phones, and I'm like, I don't know if I could ever get my kid a cell phone at 7, 8. And then I'm like, well, what if he needs something, and what if he needs me? And but then you start to get to those things, like maybe there's a benefit, but also I didn't have a cell phone at 7 and 8, you know. But times have also changed, so there's so many different things, and it's hard to. I don't know if there's a right answer.
No, Jonathan Haidt's answer is a flip phone.
Yeah, that's what we've talked about that too. Yeah.
Have you checked them out? I'm sure there's got to be these new age flip phone type low tech phones.
I'm sure there are. I haven't checked any out, no. But I'm sure there are. We're so far away that we haven't really talked about it that seriously. But yeah, I'm sure there are something like that, or like phones that are. I know they make phones for kids that are like a little bit more safer, that don't have like internet and stuff like that. So I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to really say, but it's crazy that I'm even thinking about giving a kid a phone at 7 or 8, but it's like what every other parent does now. And is that the right thing? I don't know, you know?
I don't, yeah. I mean, you're the father, and I'm actually thinking of a memer, of a comedian on Instagram, Jared Benson, and he does Gen Alpha memes, and they're so funny. And the kid always has an iPad. The kid always has an iPad. There's this one meme of the kid just using the iPad to move a lot of money, and he's like, "Oh, I just threw $20,000 to like some meme coin," and it's very funny, but it hits a deeper point.
Yeah. Yeah. So for sure, that's funny. And that makes sense. Because I think like we were at dinner the other day, Lexi and I think I was texting you when we left. We were at dinner, and we don't have we don't have iPad stuff for Milo to bring. And I don't think that's something we really want to bring to dinner and do that type of thing. We're trying to, if he cries or gets fussy, we're trying to do other things to, you know, stimulate him. So, but we saw another family that had an iPad, and the kid was like watching it. And I feel like that's like it's a lot easier, but I don't know. I struggle with it because it's like I'm not trying to say I'm better than or anything like that, but there's something I don't know. I don't know. It's a really hard balance of like what is the right thing. You think about all of these things, like especially as a parent now, like I think about decisions that we're making for our kids now, and I think of it like how is it going to impact them long term? And I've never really had to think about those things of like my life. I kind of just do them sometimes, and it's really helped me figure out like the things that I'm doing right now are impacting my future, but also my son's future. And then similarly, like the decisions I'm making for him, whether that's feed.
Oh man, Michael just went out. Continue, Mike.
Okay. Or like the habits that I'm doing now that he'll start to see as he gets older, like those are going to impact him and the way he grows up. All that to say, all these decisions that you make, it's just like whether they're right or wrong, they have a profound impact on your kid in the future. And that's just like kind of a crazy, scary, wild thing, but also kind of a cool thing because you have the opportunity to kind of, I don't know if you want to say mold, but help guide someone towards what you feel as though is the best path towards. I don't know if it's happiness or I don't know. I don't really know, but
Well-being.
Well-being. That's a great way to put it. Yes.
It's very, I mean, being a father is really something else. When you're a child, it's like you're, the world is mine. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, things for sure. Yeah, I think there's so many things now that to me just like aren't important anymore or as important as they used to be for me. Maybe even things of like football, like watching football on Sundays, like that. I still enjoy watching it every once in a while, but I would much rather like spend time with my family and the time that I do have with my family rather than like watch football. So I'm not going to go out of my way to go watch football or like make sure that I'm at this certain place to watch football. Like if my family's out doing something, that's going to be the priority, you know? And it's small things like that that just seem a lot more important than, a football game that it used to be. And it's just, I can't even give it. There's probably plenty other examples, but it's just weird how much less you care about other things and shows and things that I used to feel like I cared about. But like we don't watch TV really anymore. It's just like we just do other things as a family, and it's just weird. But it's kind of cool at the same time. It's just a different. Yeah, I don't know how to explain it. It's just a weird experience.
What do you do instead?
That's a good question. I mean, a lot of it's just like trying to spend time with, well, it's like, because you're taking care of this kid. And I mean, let's talk about like a regular work day, for example, right? I wake up to go to the gym in the morning before Lexi and Milo get up. And then I get back, and then Milo and Lexi are just kind of like starting their morning, making breakfast for Milo. He's eating breakfast, and then we have to get him ready to go to school. So we pop him, upstairs, change his diaper, do all that stuff, put him in the car. Lexi goes to drop him off. She goes to work out. Then I get back and I like do. Trying to think of like my morning. I'll make breakfast, then I'll start my work day, and then I'll work all day. And then as soon as we're done, I have to go pick up Milo. And then we're like hanging out with him, eating dinner. Then we eat our dinner. We put him down, do that whole thing at 7:30, 8 o'clock by that point. So like you don't really have time to like do all these other things, And so a lot of times it's like, all right, what am I going to do with this hour and a half that I have? Typically I go to bed at like 8:30, 9:30, depending on the day. But by that time, I like to like kind of wind down by like stretching or doing something that's like stimulating my body in some sense because it's just sitting in a chair all day type of thing. And then I'll try to like do some sort of reading, or sometimes while I'm stretching, I'll watch maybe a show or something, maybe, or I'll read a book or something, or Lexi and I will have a conversation. So it's just like there's just not as much time to do those things, and that's not a bad thing. It's just you don't have that time anymore, to just be free and do whatever you want, which is not a bad thing. It's just It's just different, you know.
Very
But like
different.
that's like a normal day, you know. It's
Limited window.
yeah, there's a limited window. Sorry, I keep breaking up. I don't know what's going on. But yeah, there's a limited window, and so then I think of like that time, and I'm like, do I really want to be wasting my hour and a half doing nothing? That's like doing something that's mindless. And so then I feel like I have to do something that's more mindful, whether that's something stimulating with my brain or my body or whatever it may be, right? So I think it's just like thinking about things differently because before you would just have all this time to do stuff and you would just almost take it for granted because you're just like do whatever you want with that time. And it's like, oh, here it is. It's 10 o'clock. I need to go to bed. And you're not even thinking about it. Where this time you have to be more structured with your day, if that makes any sense.
Yes, it does. Having real world responsibilities is
Yeah.
and it's and even having a job and no wife and no kid or even no significant other of any type, it's way less. I mean, you're held to very little,
Yeah.
requirements. Because
Yeah.
depending on who you, I don't know. Once you have like everyone around you, then providing for them is very difficult for anyone.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. And it's like, it's just it's a different level of the responsibility. It's just like, oh my God, I have to like take care of this human. But it's like also so beautiful, but it's freaking hard. Like it's very hard. You know, like Lexi and I are like kind of like fighting a sickness right now ish, all because his daycare and he's got daycare and he's got the daycare sickness and then you're dealing with that stuff and it's wild. It's a crazy experience. And it flies by like so fast. Like, I mean, everybody says that and it's crazy to me that Milo, like next week, he's going to be 11 months and next month he's going to be a year. Like, can't even believe that already. It's just crazy how like fast it goes. Because like when you're in it, the days feel so like long and you're like at the end of the day and you're just like, holy shit, I'm exhausted, you know? But a year is still a long time, you know? But it feels like the days feel so long, but then the year flies by so quick.
I can't. Yeah.
I feel like I've heard this multiple times, but everybody says like the days are long, but the years are short.
Oh yes, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Time really goes by.
Yes. Very sure. Very much. But it's a really fun experience and a very rewarding experience at the end of the day. When you have moments where he's like laughing and like he's starting to like just like like put his head on my chest and like kind of cuddle type of thing when he's tired, like that stuff is just like, oh my gosh, like this little
Oh
good.
yeah.
Yeah, just this unconditional love between like you and a little human. It's just I don't know how to explain it. It's hard to explain, but it's just such a cool experience.
Yes, probably. I've said it a couple times. I can't, you know, comprehend. And Russ Roberts, the host of Econ Talk, he speaks about this. It's like asking people whether having a child was worth it, or asking them if not having a child was worth it is just a ridiculous question, because you're a different person
Yeah,
once you have that child, and your whole
for sure.
value set and your whole mindset's completely different, so it's kind of a nonsensical question.
Yeah.
It's
Sorry. Yeah, I think yeah, there's their value sets definitely change.
yes.
And like I know just thinking about like if I had to think about before and after like being a parent, like I would just think of things like, okay, if I did this, like it's only impacting me type of thing. But now I'm like the decisions I make, I'm thinking about, okay, if I do this, this is going to impact my kid too. Or I'll give you a good example. Um, like Lexi and I, we've met some neighbors when we hung out with them a couple of times. And we've like we had like a get together last weekend. Do you want to do something about that, or is that just gonna keep happening?
I guess maybe. I'm not sure.
I don't know what to do.
I don't know what to do either.
I just don't want it to screw anything up.
I know. This is the joys of live stream. I think it's best to just keep going, and then
Okay.
when it breaks up, just like in your back end, just keep going.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so last weekend we were out, and so like literally right across the street, we have like this like camera that we watch on our phone. So like if anything happens, we see what's going on, right? But anyways, we were right across the street, and we went over to our neighbors, and I had like maybe a margarita or two, and Lexi wasn't drinking, and Lexi's like, "Hey, I want to go home. You can stay out though." And like I decided, I was like, I'm gonna go home with you. It's like a really small thing, but like I feel like in the past, had Milo not been here, I would have 100% stayed out and just like wanted to hang out with my neighbors, right? But having Milo, I feel like it made me feel like I wanted to be a united front with my wife and go home with my wife and like set this precedent and example of like my wife and I are like on the same page. My son sees these things, even though he's not even seeing this. I don't know why. It's just like a small thing of like, I feel like this is the right thing to do as a dad, like to just be on the same page with my wife. So that way in the future, he can see those things. Does that make any sense? Like it was a really small, subtle thing. And in the moment, I didn't think that, but like Lexi and I were kind of having like a reflective conversation, and that popped up in my mind. And I felt like in the past, I would never have done that. But it's such a small thing that I felt like, oh my gosh, I don't know. It was just a small thing, but it felt so big in the moment, if that makes any sense.
That makes sense. That's a big thing, and especially if it's natural and it's not forced and it's something that you want.
For sure.
You know, a lot of things like addiction, if you're trying to force something and it doesn't seem natural, then but if you're able to easily do it, then it's just like it's not even it's very small.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, just like I don't even know if it was like addiction. It was just more of like
I just bring on the term addiction because like if it's really effortless, and that might have been the wrong thing, but like not having to put a lot of effort towards doing something, not having to like really force yourself into a situation and just feeling it's natural, I think. Versus, I mean, I don't know necessarily why I brought on addiction, but it's because they try and take on something and it's very forced, and it's just I don't know, when it's not all natural and in sync. I think it feel one in harmony with the world.
Yes, For sure. Yeah. I think, I know in that moment. Yeah. I know what you mean. I hear what you're saying. It just felt, I didn't question like, oh, I want to stay out. I was just like, okay, she wants to go home. Like, let's go home. It's time. It's fine. I had my fun. We were out together. It's time to go home, And it felt like it just, to me, like that was a big deal because I know my past and I know I would have been like, oh no, I want to go hang out and like get to know my neighbors a little bit more and like have a couple more drinks and, you know, whatever. But I was like, it didn't really serve me any good doing that anymore. So it didn't make sense. So yeah, it's like a very small thing. To me, I think it was a big moment because I think historically in the past, um, I know like I would use alcohol as a way to connect with people for sure. Like, I mean, I feel like a lot of people do when they're in early 20s, right? You would use alcohol to connect with people, and it's like, well, I'm drinking. I want to hang out with people. I want to get to know them a little bit more. And I didn't feel the need to do that anymore. I was just like, well, it's okay. It's not a big deal type of thing.
Yes. It's I mean, to not that's really great. And any other changes that you think are similar?
I think just thinking about like, uh, just your future and like your current decisions and how they'll impact your son or kid. I think to me is like a profound thing. Like I might be like deeply looking into it more than I should be, but I feel like I've been reading a lot of there's this do you know who Ryan Holiday is?
Yes.
He
The
like
stoic.
correct. He has a book called The Daily Dad. And he has like an email called The Daily Dad. He also has an email and a book called The Daily Stoic, which are like 365 meditations for every day that you can like read it. It's kind of like just a quick stoic thing talking about parenthood and like how to be a dad or like just like good things and things to remember and like stories and passages to remember about being a dad, right? And a lot of which are like just setting a good example and what setting a good example does for your kids, like, and how long of a way that goes. Because, like, you could be doing something and they'll pick up on it, and it could be a bad thing or a bad habit, and you're not even realizing it's a bad thing. It's like those things. So you're just like more mindful and more like thinking about your everyday actions of like, okay, if I do this now, or if I start this habit, this is going to be good for my future self, but also for my son. It like wants to just make you. It makes me. He makes me want to be a better person, just because I want to like set a good example for him. You know what I mean? And so I'm thinking of ways to better myself for him, just because I want to set that good example. You know what I mean?
Yes. Sins of your father. Have you ever heard that?
I feel like yes.
Yeah, I think that's I've heard that. I'm not sure where I heard that, but it's a phrase.
I feel
And
like I've heard that too, but I'm not sure exactly where I've heard that either. But yeah, for sure. And yeah, it's I don't ever want to instill, you realize how young and impressionable you were as a kid and how like small things that your parents did like affected you or did, you know what I mean? So it's like it makes you hyper aware of like, oh crap, like I could be doing these things. And yeah, sins of your father, like I just I'm just being more mindful. And I'm also like knowing that I'm going to fuck up. There's going to be things that I do that are wrong. But I think the approach that I want to take, we want to take It's just like being vulnerable and being okay with like those fuck ups and like is kind of the approach that I think we want to have. And this is all to say we have a 10-month-old son, so things might change, but as of now, these are things that we're talking about, which I think is very important to just have these discussions and conversations, now.
Yes, talk is cheap, and that's
Yeah.
Have you heard that in a positive context?
Yes.
Talk is cheap, so you can go over there, talk to someone, get their opinion, see what it's like. Or, I mean, and then for your significant other, I mean, you have to talk. When the communication stops, it's a really big deal.
For sure. Yeah, I think that was one of the cool things that, like, with that book. We'll read it every night when we're like eating dinner together, and it's like a conversation starter a lot of times because we'll like read a passage or we'll like talk about a story of like some person in the past and their parenting style, or like what they did, or like this thing, I don't know, just something along those lines. And it always brings us to talk about like what we want to do and how we want to be different from maybe what our parents did. And it like takes us back to old stories about our families and our upbringing and how we want to be a little bit different. So I think that's been a really cool thing that we've done that have like sparked conversations and have helped us kind of formulate our philosophy and like how we want to raise a family,
That's really great. I don't think a lot of couples do that. I think Milo's lucky that you two are doing that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Lexi and I I got lucky. I'll say that. That's for sure. She's helped me with communication more than I've talked about it, I know, in the past, for sure, on this podcast. But yeah, she's helped me a ton with just like communicating and being open and willing to have conversations. It's cool to have a partner like that.
What do you think you've improved in with communication?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think just like hearing the other person. Like, I feel like, and I struggle with this still sometimes, but like when you're saying something, you're saying it, but you're not really hearing the other person and what they're saying because you're so I don't know what the right word is, but you're so like passionate about what you believe and what you're saying that you're just not even like hearing what that other person has to say.
Yes.
And I think when I realized that, like, at the end of the day, like, we are partners and we are in this relationship together, and that she's not like trying to hurt me and she's not trying to like do anything against me or anything like that. It's all just like, I just need to take a second to hear her perspective and not just be so zoned into like how I feel. Once I like took that layer back to be like, holy shit, like she's just saying something and it's okay for her to feel this way. And I don't have to just feel this way. And it's like, she's a human too. Like, she has a right to feel that way. And I just need to hear her out. Once I like learned that, I was like, oh wow, like she's just communicating how she feels, as am I. Why is my feeling any more right or wrong than hers, So I think just like hearing her and just taking a second to be like, oh shit, you're right, like I did say it this way, or I did understand how I made you feel, or yeah, I think that was like the biggest thing. And then also just like not being afraid to like speak my truth of how I felt. I feel like I never in the past had communicated how I truly felt because I was afraid of how that person would take it, or like I would make them feel. And so I would just like not say anything and I would just shut down because I was like, well, I don't want them to feel a certain way, so I'm just not going to say it, and I'm just going to shut down and like run away from the conversation because it's just easier to do that. And instead, like actually just communicating how I feel. And although it might like hurt at first for that other person to hear that because it might make them feel a certain way, it makes things a heck of a lot easier. I think that's been a game changer for me and learning that with her for sure.
That makes sense. And that's a good leeway to negotiating.
Yes.
Because Chris Voss, who we spoke about earlier, Never Split the Difference,
Yes.
FBI negotiator on Instagram. He speaks about, I mean, that's empathy, right?
Yeah.
Putting yourself in the other person's shoes, not, being immersed in your own story, but getting into their story, and then also, trying to have them see your perspective as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good. That was a heck of a segue, by the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, for sure. I think listening to his books and or that Never Split the Difference book, he definitely talks a lot about that. Of like, you have to give them something of what they want. Like, there has to be a win-win in a way, right? And I think I've learned that from the relationship side of the house, but yeah, from the negotiating side of the house, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm not like, from a work perspective, I don't negotiate like contracts or anything, but I am very close to the people who do negotiate the contracts. And it's interesting to like see how they communicate with the people who are buying from us, because a lot of times it is it's like a win-win. You have to have some sort of win-win. Somebody has to win both things, right? I don't know. It's
Yeah.
interesting. You have to have empathy for what their experience is and how they're going through life. And yeah, it's a fascinating thing. I love listening to negotiating and how people negotiate because everybody does a little bit different.
Yes. Everyone does it different. And when I say negotiating, I mean like kind of, getting any deal done, not just a specific deal, but like getting a yes
Yeah.
on a sale, on a consistent, on an interaction too. I mean, it doesn't have to be like a sale. It could be,
A yes to a meeting.
What?
A yes to a meeting.
Yes, a yes to a meeting. Anything. It's like it kind of all relates to each other, and you want to be good at it. I mean, I feel like I want to be good at it.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think? Like, what is your biggest takeaway from the book and just like listening to him a little bit more of like things that you've taken away as being something you can put into practice immediately?
Being positive,
Yeah.
being positive, framing things in a positive light.
Yeah.
Trying to gain empathy and also give empathy. Because I'm not necessarily, but like, I think, like you said, win-win also. And consistent. Like, I'm not sure if he speaks about that, but what about, do you have any other books that you like or any other kind of people?
It's a good question. Not necessarily. I do think like I've read a couple of books on like sales. I don't know if it's necessarily negotiating, but there's like a bunch of different schools of thought with sales and like the best approach and who is the right I don't think anybody's right. It's just everybody's a little bit different. And I think like what I've learned, and again, I'm not like super into sales, but from my counterparts that are really good salesmen, is like sometimes you have to be just dependent upon the client. Like you have to kind of flex and be a little bit different dependent upon who your person is in front of you, right? So I think like a little bit of it is like you have to be malleable. You have to be open and willing to change your approach and not be so stuck in your ways just because this is how you always done something, right? Like sometimes you might have to take the approach of like the challenger sale, which or like the gosh, I'm blanking on it, but there's like a approach of like if someone is trying to challenge you on buying something from them, and you're like, well, you don't have to buy this. Like you can go buy something else. Like that's fine. You don't need our product for this. That almost makes them like, oh shit, are you sure? Like, why are you not trying to sell me? And it kind of like makes them second guess. And I've seen a couple of my counterparts do that really well with certain personas because they are a little bit more like bullish, and it kind of makes them back off a little bit. I think those things are just fascinating to me, just like the different personas and how to like adapt depending upon who you're talking to.
Being adaptable is huge. And, that's why empathy comes really big into play, because you have to hear the person out, have to hear what they desire out of life
Yeah.
or out of that situation. I mean, really out of, life, because it all kind of plays in. I mean, and also framing your own thought. I think that's one thing Chris Voss, like really framing it. He even brought in this Michael Vick interview from like 12 years ago, and how like Michael Vick framed something negatively and the whole media like took it negatively. But like if you're able to frame it in a positive way, it brings on a huge people, people are more open. He also said people are much more hesitant to say yes than they are to say no. So framing things instead of saying like, would you want this, is saying like, is there any reason you wouldn't want this?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you definitely going to say no to this? Something like that, where they have to purposefully say yes to a negative of your product or anything. It's like it's much more difficult for someone to say yes. When he mentions that if someone says no, they feel empowered.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. And yeah, for sure. I feel like I've definitely seen that approach. Or I think the one thing I've learned a lot of, like, I wouldn't say negotiating, but just like building that empathy is like just asking good questions and like just being curious, I think. And also just like, so being curious and also being a good listener, like those are two things that I think go a long way, because if you're a good listener, that empathy portion, like it flips on a lot easier. You're listening for ways to be empathetic. Does that make any sense? Like,
yes,
like how to relate and connect back to those people.
Versus what you said earlier, where you were like immersed in your own story, and so you're listening to like kind of bring in your own perspective and one up, or kind of bring it back to your.
Exactly. 100%. Yeah.
It's I mean, it's tough. Some people never even care to learn stuff like this.
Yeah.
Or they try and like force it. It's tough to force something like that. You kind of have to, try and be in that way of being in order to really, in order to be empathetic, in order to frame things positively, in order to, you know, speak with someone kindly. I think customer service goes a long way. And I mean, I feel like customer service in the last, 5 or 6 years has definitely dropped off significantly from where it was like 20 years ago. I'm
I
even,
agree,
yeah, 20 years ago, but 10, 15 too.
for sure. I feel like the level of expectation is definitely lower. And like you're almost expecting to talk to someone crappy on the other phone or on the other line, or like when you go somewhere, you're expecting for that to not be as great of experience as maybe it once was. Um, that is the one thing I've noticed here. I will say is like people are pretty nice here in the South, um, in terms of like service wise that I've spoken with, which has been interesting coming from Chicago. Like when I go to a grocery store, nobody gives a shit. But like going to the grocery stores here, people are really nice and like try to have a conversation with you, ask you how your day's going. It's very small but and subtle, but it like makes an impact on you, and it makes you feel a complete different way walking away from that experience. And if you had a negative interaction with the customer service person at a place, right? It's like night and day.
Wow. Southern hospitality.
Yeah, for sure. People are very nice here. It's very refreshing, I'll say.
What are some other things you enjoy being out there?
Oh, that's a good question. I love the well, I'll say like my neighborhood. I'll start there because that's where I spend a lot of my time. My neighborhood, a lot of people are from other places, like in the country. Um, so a lot of us are very open to like just meeting people and having conversation, which is cool. So we became fast friends with a couple of our neighbors, which has been really cool. Um, in terms of like the area and like where we live, I think it's very family friendly and family oriented. Like there's a lot of family stuff to do. So Lexi and I can still kind of have our own lives, but also like bring our kid everywhere. Like there's so many kids everywhere running around at like whether it's a brewery or whatever it may be. Like there's kids running around everywhere, which to me that's like something we wanted, as we wanted to be able to bring Milo wherever we go and still have like a good experience for him, but also for us too, where we can like do some things and not just be holed up on our house or whatever it may be. So I think that was something that we've really enjoyed about being here, although we haven't fully explored yet, just because he's a little bit younger. I think that's something we're really excited about living here for sure. There's a lot of young families. So for us being a young family, I think that's something that we love. And yeah, the Southern hospitality aspect was great. We love that we're so central to like a lot of different areas. So like if we wanted to go travel somewhere, a lot of places are within like a 3 hour car drive of us. Like Atlanta, if we ever wanted to go big city, Charlotte's 2 hours away. Asheville's like an hour away. Charleston's 3 hours away. Savannah, Georgia's 3 hours away. Like a lot of things in our general vicinity, if we wanted to go on a quick vacation, we can always do it. Just somewhere a little bit different, or if we wanted to get out to a bigger city, like we could always do that. Um, I think Greenville's like downtown area. It's small, but it's very cool, and it's very uh, like there's still good restaurants and stuff. So it's got like a really good mixture of everything that Lexi and I like. Um, with a lot better weather as well outside of Chicago. So even though it's supposed to be snowing again next week, for the
Wow.
first 3 years, today it was like 54 degrees and no sunny. So that was awesome.
That's great.
Yeah.
Not
And
having what go?
sorry. And it's very affordable to live out here. So just like your dollar feels like it stretches a lot further here.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Better, yes. I mean, yeah. It's really crazy. Prices in California.
Dude, Yeah, it's like, isn't it like $7 a gallon for gas?
It's not that crazy. No.
Didn't it
It's
used to
like
be?
it used to be.
Okay.
It's not that like that anymore, but it's a very expensive place to live, and housing is pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's a huge state. It should have cheap housing,
Yeah.
cheaper housing than it has.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I always go back and forth because like I love California. It's beautiful. But I don't know. It's hard for me to like think about
Because of
the cost of living. Um, yeah, to me, I don't know. It just seems like your dollar won't go as far, and like I don't know. I want to be a little bit more comfortable. I don't know. I don't know. How does it feel for you? Like being there, have you noticed, especially with like inflation in the last couple of years, like have you noticed things gotten a lot more expensive, or how does it feel for you living there?
um I couldn't imagine really living anywhere else. I probably, yeah, it would be tough to live somewhere else. I definitely would do it. I would definitely do it if I had the opportunity. But, you know, where else would I go? It probably wouldn't, like, I don't know where I'd want to go
Yeah,
personally. I don't necessarily need to leave for what reason do I need to leave,
for sure.
Because like I just have no reason as of the moment. And if I did, I'd consider it.
Yeah, I for sure get that. And I obviously we have different like I haven't lived in California since I was like 18,
Wow.
except for like a little like 3 months after graduation. But yeah, I haven't lived in California that long, so I don't even know how it feels to be like an adult there and live there. And but when I come back, it's nice to be home. I just can't even imagine being there. I think it's just because I've been so many other places, and it seems like to me when I go there, it seems so freaking crowded, like everywhere, like the freeways and there's not one empty plot of land, and that seems like weird to me now, having gone to school in Nebraska and living in Vegas for a little bit, now living here. Like there's empty plot of lands where it's just normal. I don't You don't see that in California. It's just like crazy to me to even think about just how like populated it is. Um, but I still like I don't know. I still love California at heart. At the same time, it's just like just weird because I haven't lived there for so long.
Yes. And the income tax is horrible.
Yeah, that too.
It's and then there's still a deficit, and it's just it's a nightmare, dude.
Yeah. Have you noticed like any friends or anything like leaving in droves, or have you noticed it more so just being stagnant for the people that you know? Or
Most people did not leave, I think. A few people left. I would say a lot of people I know did not leave though.
yeah,
Most of them stayed. Some of them went to Texas, but a lot of them stayed here.
got it.
A few people, I don't know. It's definitely not like it was. It's even harder now than it was when we were younger.
Harder
Like
now. What regard?
like I'd be like being an 18 or 22-year-old and
Yeah,
considering like a lot of people don't go to school anymore. Like, I think education, I'm interested to see how all these universities, play out in the next 20 to 30 years, 40 years. It should be interesting.
because it's getting so expensive and people are not able to justify the cost anymore, and they're able to learn what they need to on their own type of thing, or what do you mean by that?
That too, um, student debt being dispensed by the federal government and then, forgiven by the federal government, and students not receiving the ROIs on a lot of these
Yeah.
more expensive educations. So, I mean, they're becoming wiser. Students aren't necessarily taking out the types of loans that this seems that they were taking out several years ago.
Yeah. Have you seen I don't know if do you watch South Park, or have you seen South Park?
No. Yes, not really. Not many.
They like recently they've been doing like hour-long specials rather than like doing seasons. And one of the specials they did like maybe like 6 months ago was kind of like a play on all of these like tech people are no longer like the rich people, and the rich people are now the people who are like handymen and like plumbers and like all this stuff, and like they're basically like, it's like flipped how like the tech people are no longer rich and the plumbers are all the rich people. And like it's just kind of funny because it goes to say like how much the like trades have gone, like nobody does trades anymore, but it seems as though like there's younger kids that are starting to do like stop doing school, like universities, starting to do like trades and stuff like that now. I just thought it was funny. If you ever have a chance to watch it, it's really funny, and it just kind of like makes fun of that whole thing. But I thought it was funny.
Wow. It's very interesting time
Yeah.
with AI and technology and being
Yeah.
a technology person.
Yeah.
A lot of people were taught to code, and now it's like, is coding going to be as relevant as it was?
Yeah. How do you feel about that? Like,
I think it's definitely still here for like 10 years, and I
yeah.
think it's still going to be huge. Probably another 20 years. I really can't imagine AI I mean, it depends on like what you do. Like, you have to just do more because
Yeah.
you can't just like code up like just this one little thing. Like, you have to do more. And because now an AI can solve, like, dude, for coding, it's like really crazy because the AI will solve this really monotonous thing. Like, I'm absolutely astounded because, like, there's some things that you do where it's like this block of code and it's like just really tedious getting that block of code to work. And AI will do it like that. And it's really, it's not perfect, but like when you see it do something like that, you're just like, holy crap.
Yeah.
But getting it, I don't know. I still think like there's a lot of things in tech where it's like you have to be. I had a person going into college who was like, should I do software or try and do a different type of engineering? I told them a different type because everyone does software at some point, like if you're an engineer.
So for you, like, do you feel like your job or like your previous job like will be irrelevant in 10 years?
No, not at all. Because
No.
I wasn't a software engineer. I was a systems engineer. And
Got it.
even now, like, I think that's a bigger thing because the systems person is more like a designer, architect. And I say this like architecting things, like even for Zayuk, like bringing all these things in, like drone inspections, figuring out how to do, like, we're like the only software company that has a service to go to your property, inspect it, capture it, integrate that within our app. And that's part of like doing more, having a system, being more than just a piece of software. It's like, you know, I think there's new standards to be met.
Yeah.
And like, we'll go.
No, I was just commenting. Yeah. Go ahead though.
And I think like a lot of things, like a lot of me being able to get to a certain point here without AI would have been really tough. And so, you know, it would have been really tough to learn a lot of things and to just get some of this code out and be at the product at where it is now without like Chat GPT, even doing some other things like translating. So I have like an entire Spanish version and I didn't like, you know, have to Google that. It just like automatically filled in through the lines of code.
Wow.
And so I think it really helps less, you know, you do like more. And I think do more with less and the ideas become huge. I mean, that's the one thing I think I've realized is like the ideas and execution skill. But like if you don't have the idea at the beginning, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah, because you have to be able to prompt it in a way to like get you to where you want to be, type of thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. What like systems have you used to, like you said, ChatGPT, and like what others have you used that have helped you like scale or like start to make your life easier in terms of like running your business?
Opus Clip for trimming podcasts. That one's incredible. Opus Pro or Opus Clip. That's a podcast one that you definitely, anyone creating a podcast would want.
Okay.
Then we use Zoom AI. So I think all meeting ones are very valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And the coding ones are insanely valuable. Like it's actually I find it really interesting that like I know a lot of people use ChatGPT, but like for coding the tools are like really crazy. I think they seem to be better than anywhere else.
Do you pay for like a separate version of ChatGPT then?
Yeah, I do. I pay $20 for a version.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. And then I also do Copilot and Amazon Q and Copilot and Amazon Q.
Copilot's Microsoft.
Yeah.
What about Google's?
I used to have Google's in my I don't really use it because it's not in they use it. I sometimes use Google search and then Bard, or it's not Bard, it's Gemini shows something. But I like ChatGPT way more.
Yeah.
How about you? What do you use?
I've used ChatGPT mainly. But just for like random stuff, like I don't really like use it I haven't used it probably as efficiently as I should or could, but I play around with it every once in a while and like throw stuff in there. Even just like thinking about ideas of like what are cool, like thinking about, okay, I'm thinking about this personal training business that I'm like in the process of starting. And I'm like trying to think of ideas of names. And I just like thought, hey, what are like, so I'm into like the Stoic ideas and philosophies, right? What are like ways to like build that into my fitness or brand, right? Like how can I make a name? Just like putting stuff like that in there. It's like they came up with cool ideas. I'm like, okay, that's actually a cool idea or cool name, you know? But I know there's probably ways that you can be a lot more strategic that I just haven't gotten to that realm yet.
I mean, one thing that I did is like data, mock data for my app in case I ever need to just do a demo. That it really does that well. I actually post a few of my, I don't do all the social media, so I have social media do some of the AIs. I'm sorry, I have the AIs, write the social media, and honestly, people seem to like that more than me myself speaking. It seems to get more traction.
So they like you write, like you just like have it write content and then you post it. Or is there like any like copyright to that, or is it yours if you ask it to write it?
I believe it's mine if I ask it to write it.
Ah, that's interesting.
And I've checked copyright on like full essays, and it has zero copyright. It's 100% AI detection, but zero copyright. I'm amazed, actually.
It's very interesting.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, because it's interesting because that's something like I've started to like. This is kind of a good segue for a podcast. Starting a podcast, as I was talking about like starting the personal training business and stuff. Sorry, I made my own Twitter, like a separate Twitter for like a fitness Twitter. I just started like posting stuff, and I actually started doing similar to what you said of like, okay, I like doing mobility, for example. Like, give me 7 positives of like why mobility is good, and I'll make like a Twitter thread of like why those things are beneficial, like things like that, or there's like content ideas, right, or whatever. So I'm just trying to like think of different things like that and just start to put things out there, like you said. So
That's a lot of brain power too. Like if you'd actually put that yourself, like
for sure.
that, but the idea of having it, like you had the idea to have 7 of those and then you posted it. So that's what I'm saying. Like having the idea is like, and I spoke about this a bunch, like architecting, like you're now the architect of this thing. So like marketing, gone. I honestly think accounting too, gone. Legal, gone. Like you don't need a lawyer. Like, I'm sorry, but lawyers, you don't necessarily, I'm sorry, that was not legal advice. You might need a lawyer. Then that was not legal advice at all. But a lot of legal based stuff can probably be solved with basic chat GPT prompts. And
Nuts.
if it's accurate and if it gives good legal advice and if it's legal, like if it's actually a legal thing, like that's a perfect job. Like just some basic stuff, like a question, like, most people aren't going to go pay like $1,000 or something crazy for a lawyer to ask a few questions anymore. It's like, so that's why I think, go.
Sorry. I was like, so then because I agree with you, and I feel like I've heard this question come up of like, so where do those people go? Like those who may be out of a job in 10, 15 years, like what do they do? Like, are those people, what are those people going to end up doing,
Maybe there'll be, I really don't know. I genuinely have no clue. I hope it goes well. I hope, I'm fairly optimistic. I think people can adapt, and they'll probably have to take on, what I imagine happening is blue collar workers will have to take on, white collar workers will have to take on blue collar work.
Yeah.
And
but I feel like, was blue collar work going away, like with automation and all this stuff? Or
isn't blue collar work hard, like with your hands?
Yes. But like, I guess historically it's been like steel workers and all that stuff, and those are all like automated.
I think of anything that isn't like retail, like cashiers, like Uber drivers,
Yeah.
anything that isn't in front of a computer.
Sorry, that goes back to the South Park thing I was talking about of like those people then becoming the wealthy people because they have to be, or I don't know. But yeah, I'd it's interesting. I don't know. I agree. That's interesting. I think. Do you think that there'll be more people that turn into like because content is so like valuable right now? Like it'll be a lot more individuals and like a lot more people consuming content, and so because of that, there'll be more like influencer type people for like certain niches, and like AI can like almost enable them to be more efficient and better. Does that make any sense? Are you tracking?
What do you know?
I don't know how to explain what I'm thinking. Um, but like, will some of those people turn into like more? 'Cause like we were talking about earlier, like those. This is a good example. Before we jumped on here, we were talking about content creators and like everybody streaming, and all these young kids, like all they do is just stream everything, right?
Yes.
Like, do you think that's just going to be the norm now of like the new
Yes.
coming up, and that's just how it is? And like, especially with AI, they're going to like superpower what they're currently doing because it's going to help them get more content and make things quicker and make more clips and all this stuff. That's kind of what I mean.
That's what people are worried about. They're
Yeah,
worried about like this very consolidated area of power.
yeah,
And we'll see. I mean, it could happen. I don't think it'll happen. I think it'll be fine, hopefully. But people have to be prepared. I mean, that's most people just don't prepare for these things.
yeah.
And that's like the issue. It's like it could happen, but you have to like be prepared for 5 to 10 years from now, like when
Sure.
it does, because have a fallback plan.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Okay. So going back to starting the podcast though, and so I've had this thought of like, okay, how can I learn more? Because I know what I know based on like my body, what works well for me, and what I've tried and experienced. And there's so much information out there as it relates to fitness and health. There's a lot of really good information. There's a lot of bullshit information. Like, how do you parse out that good information and how do you parse out that bad information? Is a lot of it just trial and error, or like, like how do you figure out what's going to be effective for multiple people? Like I listened to so many different podcasts of like health, and then I listened to this one that talks about women shouldn't do this because women, the way you train women are a little bit different than the way men are to be trained and all these things. And then you hear this other podcast saying the complete opposite. So it's like there's just so much information and content out there. How do you dissect it all? So my thought is like, okay, maybe I can just start to interview trainers, like maybe locally, maybe across the country, maybe people that I know, and just like learn and pick their brains on like how they've perfected their craft and how they started and the results they've gotten from certain people and multiple people. And maybe that's how I can just start to learn. All that to say, like, how did you start your podcast? Like, what was kind of like your evolution of like starting it, and what were you trying to gain out of it? What have you found to be successful, etc.?
I'm not sure what I tried to gain out of it. I started it right before, probably 6 months before COVID, and then restarted it like a few months, like 10 months after COVID started. Um, it's a really good way to connect with other people, I think. Uh, and it's producing versus consuming content is way different. It's like other side of the ball game, and so you learn a lot. And so versus consuming content, it's like and the things I did for my podcast helped me for, Zayuk marketing material and vice versa, because you learn about like setting up your scenes. This is from like Mr. Beast and bringing value and the the perception once it's actually posted and what it looks like after it's posted. And so my journey was to just post things. That was the first, and then eventually it dropped, come back to it. I think never giving up on it, even if you take some time off, you can come back,
Yeah.
and trying to be better at it, respecting it, respecting what you're doing, not just posting things out there. Also, that was one thing for me. Some people have the issue of they want things to be perfect
Mhm.
before they post anything. And for me, it's like, all right, now I need to improve what I'm doing and respect it more and perfect it from this point on. And I'm here now. I gotta get going. That's why, like with my
Yeah.
audio, I'm really hesitant to do one now with a USB microphone. I would say the audio is the most important thing, because like you want to sound good. You want people to pleasantly enjoy consuming that. And I
Yeah.
think that's not even like out of a thing to want, more followers or to gain anything. It's like when that thing's posted, you're going to want it to sound good.
Yeah.
So put the type of production that, you think is necessary into making it good.
Yeah. That makes sense. Smart. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool that you've like been super dedicated to continue doing it. And yeah, I'm sure there's a level of like, yeah, you learn a lot because when you're just consuming, you're just like, it's very easy to like only capture maybe 10 to 15% of like what you're listening to, right? But when you're in a conversation, like you're forced to actually have to follow it and like respond and continue the conversation and like actually talk and have that conversation, right? So I'm sure it helps you take in a lot more of what you're listening to, right?
Well,
Um,
also for social media, because like it changes your relationship with social media to a certain degree when you're like actually posting things for other people to see and gain value from.
yeah, as opposed to just searching or looking.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah,
it's a way different type of approach.
yeah. It makes sense. That's cool. Yeah, I've always admired like your willingness to. I remember when you started doing it, you just like started posting stuff and like just tweeting stuff and posting stuff on Instagram and like just explore LinkedIn and like it's cool to see like it's cool to see like the Zayuk and like how it's slowly just like I see every other day I see like a new post of yours. Like I feel like you have a new part of your product and um or a new piece of content that you'll put out and it's really cool to see like how it's all because you've just been trial and erroring things like you're talking about of like perfecting that piece of content and that piece of content might not be the perfect thing but you learn how to iterate on it from that point, right? Which is kind of what you're alluding to. Um,
Yes.
so it's really cool. That's awesome. I'm super stoked for like where you're going with Zayu because it seems like it's on a good path.
I appreciate you saying that. And I am stoked you're considering starting a podcast.
Yes.
That should be very rewarding.
Yeah, I just need to do it. Like I feel like the only thing in my way is just me doing it, right? Because it's the barrier to entry is very low. But let me ask you this: like with starting, like I know you said now it's kind of like in its own sense, kind of on autopilot in a way because you have the tools to set you up.
Yes.
About the microphone, obviously like a YouTube channel. Like what else do you feel like is important?
A lot of things. It's the tools that you use, camera, your computer. If you choose to do it in person, the complexity is going to increase versus if you choose to do it remotely, it's a lot simpler. The recording tool, the editing tool, the posting tool, how you want to post them, where you want to post them, what those posts look like. It's fairly complicated actually. But
Yeah.
like once you do it a bunch of times, it's a lot simpler and it's kind of on autopilot, exactly what you said. Like
Yeah.
I kind of know, okay, now we're at this part, now I have to do this, do that, do that, do that. And Opus Pro is the best because the most consumed part of this is like clips. So making sure to have those clips is critical. And with Opus Pro, you get those clips like nothing. It's like boom, and it's not that expensive. So that's a really big, for a content creator and a video creator, the Opus Pro is like a huge game changer.
Okay. So like for the clips and the editing portion, will that like do it? Like what can you help me understand what it is?
It just clips the highest quality, just like trims it to these specific clips that you can post. And then you can take that and maybe edit it more in Canva or something else. But understanding that workflow is like really important, and getting like a nice piece of content out there too. Yes, I would say that's probably the most important thing. And then also just like Mr. Beast was like, you don't need to have a schedule. You just like put things out as they come. And, so also listening to the creators themselves, like Mr. Beast and Gary V, particularly very helpful. Gary V is really great.
Yeah. Yeah. Gary Vee, I've listened to some of his stuff, but yeah, that makes sense. I feel like there's like a lot of value for me of like what I'm thinking of it being. Like I'm really interested in the idea of just one for like learning for myself, but also I feel like the goal of like helping someone else learn the basics of like just getting into trading and just like asking those things and like trying to give that knowledge, because there's so much, but maybe that's like another element where I can provide help for people. But more than anything of just like for me just to learn, because I think it's like free education in a sense. So that's kind of what I'm after, which I think, like you said, I just need to start and just figure it out, figure out the workflows, and I will definitely be reaching out to you for questions along the way.
Yes, reach out to me and I'll give you some, tools and ideas, some ways to start. Because even like for starting, like we're talking about starting a podcast, also starting a business, like there were certain approaches for the first one that I made. I was just like overcomplicating it. Really overcomplicating it. You just like certain things that are just like kind of simple that you do, like that I can bring to a second business that just way more grounded in reality, like much more realistic and reasonable and kind of the appropriate way to go about it.
Do you have examples?
Like if you're trying to set up a product and sell it, I don't think like, you might think of, oh, what type of bank account do I need? What do I need? All this stuff. It's like you just need, customers and a payment portal, and if you know where to find the payment portal, it's pretty simple. And from there, it's like if you just need to go out, get the customers to sell to give you money, and if you can do that, you'll figure out the rest.
Yeah.
But doing everything else, like it's like completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
It depends on what you want to do, but most of the times it's like there's an objective, and just try and meet that objective.
Yeah. Do you think those things are because we think that they need to be run this way, or do you think it's a way of like trying to be perfect before, or like what do you think? Because I'm sure everybody probably does that, right? You're not the only one that's ran through those things, but like, why do you think that is that we like experience those things?
Think it's supposed to be a certain way, and it's there's no certain way. There's really no certain way, especially in like, I mean, I would say probably everything, but business for sure. There's so many different things, and like so many different businesses and types of businesses and way they're run, that to say, and there's so many different ways that like money is transacted, that it's like, and all those run through business. It's like there's no one way. And podcasting, probably is a bit more structured. But still, I think there's not really any one way. Many types of podcasts. You have Joe Rogan 3 hours. You have like very popular 7 to 10 minute ones.
Yeah.
Daily 7 to 10 minute ones. So like you have ones that are all about like murder shows, and then you have ones that are like various types of podcasts.
Did you do like I think you actually, I know you have it like the audio version. How do you just get the audio captured and upload it to like a platform?
RSS. So Buzzsprout, I can show you Buzzsprout how to use them, and then I can give you some notes on different ways to do it and tools to use.
Okay, cool.
But it's an RSS feed that goes from, you just post it there, and then they post it to all the top, like Spotify, everything really. I think those other podcasts feed from the RSS feed. Not really sure how that works, but that's the type of technology it is.
Got it. That's cool. It's fascinating.
And then YouTube is different. Then you have to post your own on YouTube. So that's like YouTube doesn't draw from the RSS feed. So like if you want video, that's a separate post.
Got it. I've noticed that a lot. I don't know if you've noticed like podcasts on Spotify, a lot more video or like have video content. Is that with Spotify?
I have never done that because the RSS feed doesn't do that. Probably have to upload it straight to Spotify, I would guess.
I'm not even thinking. I'm more so just curious, like if they're doing that, like how they do that. But I wouldn't even think about that right now at this point. But
I think you do have to upload it. I mean, you definitely doesn't go through the RSS. So any RSS is just video. So I'm sorry, it's just audio. So any video you wanted to post would have to go through its like own platform.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense.
Any other questions?
I'm sure I'll have a billion others, but as of now, I feel like you helped me at least get a better understanding. I think when you're like, maybe I got one. What about like interviewing people? How was that approach? Like, how are you selecting people to find? And then when you're actually in the interview, how are you preparing for it?
Oh, selecting people is always different. Sometimes over the internet, sometimes, people you just meet. Preparing for it, researching them. Some people don't have any sort of information about them online that interview. So just knowing who they are and
Yeah.
having a very structured conversation. Usually, I think a lot of people seem to have topics that they are comfortable about speaking with, and they want to speak about those topics, and then almost everything else they don't really want to speak about. That's kind of how I feel I've approached it. Like if there's a specific topic in there, you kind of stick to that. You give them a certain outline of different questions. I don't necessarily stick to that. It usually flows in that way. Try to structure the whole conversation in a way that, one thing to another.
So you're pre-preparing them with questions just so they can prepare themselves, or you're giving them an idea of what you'll potentially ask?
Yes, it's never one-to-one. It's always fairly like a outline of topics more so than a series of questions.
Got it. Okay.
Because it's tough to just have, go one-to-one. It's like these things usually just kind of, you try to structure it so they lead into themselves, into one another.
Got it. That makes sense.
And then, yes. And also I did this before, but try and inform people of the types of audio, the way they should be centered, try and have realistic, good video, because that's important. You want to be able, you're going to do on this video, you want to, be well seen, because it's just, you don't want to have, you want, like I said, once it's out there, it's out there. So you are going to want it to look good.
Yeah. You don't want the video to keep cutting out like mine does.
You don't want it to, well, that'll be fine. I think the clipper will still clip it, but like in general, like you don't want your face too zoomed in. You don't want like your audio messed up, but yeah, if you could not also have the video cut out, that would be good. But luckily for the clips, that can be removed, and the clips are the most important thing.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of people that aren't going to watch a full hour and a half, 2 hours.
Most people won't.
Yeah.
Most people will watch maximum of 2 minutes and more likely 3 to 7 seconds of a clip, and not even 3, maybe 1.
That's nuts.
Very short.
So that's where the clips come into handy, because if you can have as many clips as you can, and you put that out there, and like a couple gain whatever interest or whatever views, that's more likely to spread than the hour and a half long videos you have, right?
Yes. Very few people will watch the videos, but the clips will be watched.
That makes sense.
By a surprising number of people.
That makes sense. I mean, it's funny because I listened to one of the podcasts I listened to. It's called Bussin' with the Boys. It's kind of like a funnier one. It's like a sports-ish podcast. And I started watching them when they were like super small, and they've like blown up quite a bit. And I noticed they started getting bigger when they started posting like clips and like funny clips and like ones that kind of go viral. And I've noticed like that's how they've started to grow, and it's interesting to see, because you don't even need to watch their whole podcast to like get the big moments, because you'll see them on Twitter or Instagram or whatever it is, right? So it's interesting.
Clips are huge. Clips are definitely the big thing and that's what Gary Vee said. You have the live stream, which we've just done. Then you can go back and create the podcast, which is like kind of the second thing. And then you have a bunch of clips, which now you can use for the rest of, your life. You can just post them. And Gary Vee does that. He posts clips all the time. Probably has like a repo of clips in some like Google Drive or something.
Yeah, makes sense. It's interesting.
Yes. So your podcast will come out soon.
Yes. Please keep bothering me about it too, and making, because I just need to do it. Also, try, like, one thing I've struggled with, like with Parenthood, going back and like closing the loop on all this stuff, is like trying to give myself a break in a sense, because like I do have a lot going on, but also trying not to let that be an excuse for why I don't do something. So it's like a balance, you know. So that's been something I've struggled with, of like, am I just putting this off, or do I actually just have a lot going on, and should I give myself a break? So it's it's a weird balance.
Yes, being realistic is very important.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Michael, this was a good conversation.
Yes, always.
Do you have any last words for the audience?
No, but I love your. Is that a real background?
Yeah, it's a real drape.
That's awesome. I love that. That
Yeah,
looks.
that was a good, big important one too. Having a decent background and good lighting, and
Yeah,
really important the way you light it up.
yeah. I noticed that with this, it doesn't look that great. So I'll have to figure that out. But and I've just got two bare walls behind me,
2 doors,
two doors,
twin doors.
twin doors. One's a closet, one's a door. But anyways, yeah, I that's all interesting stuff, because it's like it makes a big difference, right? Like you said, and it's
It
small,
does.
but it definitely makes a big deal.
I mean, one person that's like, who's the really popular British guy right now? British
Chris Simpson.
podcaster. He had The Diary of a
Oh,
CEO.
that is CEO. Yes, 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 yes.
I mean, he makes his
Stephen Bartlett.
podcasts. What?
Stephen
Stephen
Bartlett.
Bartlett.
Yeah,
His clips are really interesting. I mean, his clips, like, granted, what they speak about is interesting too, but the way he puts his clips together, like, you'll see, like, he'll
yeah,
take, I mean, in reality, these things are nothing. Like, it's just like two people speaking, and then he throws on this clip that it's just like,
yeah,
what in the world? Like, boom, 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 boom. It's like a trailer. And
yeah,
so he has a good. So I think that's one thing. It's like, even through Zayuk or like my own podcast, like looking at other people. Because one thing I did at the beginning, which was a wrong idea, was only look at Joe Rogan. And
yeah,
Joe Rogan is in a place where he can continue doing what he does and not having to adapt, and he'll be fine. But like, that's not where you are. That's not where I am. We like have to, like Joe Rogan. I don't know if he puts out clips. I know there's GRE clips, but I don't know if he does that himself,
I don't
or
think
if
so.
someone else is doing that.
Yeah,
Which is why I say, like, people just do that of him. He's in a position where everyone's just clipping what he says. Like, he probably just has fans who go through Opus Pro with his podcast and
for sure.
post clips of it with, like, so that they can put it on accounts to go viral.
100%. Which is an interesting business in itself. But yeah, I agree. I love Stephen Bartlett. He's like my favorite podcaster right now. He's great. Very interesting content. And yeah, the way I've listened to some of his stuff. He talks about like if you ever listen to the beginning of the podcast, and how like the sounds and all the stuff, and like you said, the trailers in the beginning, and like the way he like edits it to where it makes you want to listen, because like the way they talk, and you don't hear that portion of the answer. And like he's like every episode's different depending upon the guest, and how they like have the trailers. So it's all like they're trying to get you to feel a certain way based on whoever the guest is. And I think it's just fascinating. And he's like the clips that they put out, they test and they put a bunch of stuff to see what works. Then they'll go back and reuse like just certain things based on the data that says like, oh, this And it's all about the data. That's what he talks about heavily, is like looking back on all the data of like what works and what doesn't. And I know he's talked about too, like different lighting and smells and scents and what has worked in his podcast. I think it's just
That's very. I mean, he is very successful,
yeah.
and he does very well.
Yeah,
And
it's
the
great.
content he puts out is very stimulating. So
Very,
I can't imagine the type of work that goes into it.
for sure. Yeah, he's great.
Well, Michael, we'll chat soon.
Yes, it was great catching up with you, dude.
Great catching up with you.
All right, man.